Good morning, kia ora, and welcome to a rather wintry Wellington morning here. We're at Wellington International Airport, and this morning we're flying to Dunedin, down on the South Island. Second largest city on the South Island, and 7th largest in New Zealand overall. So yeah, we're flying Air New Zealand domestically today. We're flying on an Airbus A320. Flight time's just over an hour. About 6:30 this morning, I got a text message from Air New Zealand advising that there's fairly heavy fog down in Dunedin this morning, so they're warning of possible flight delays. So hopefully we get off on time. So yeah, it's going to be a little bit hit and miss whether we get away on time this morning, but without further ado, let's head into the terminal, get checked in, and I'll see you airside. Before we head into the terminal, just a little bit of route information about today's journey. So we're starting out in the city of Wellington, which is the nation's capital, located at the southern tip of North Island. Then we're going to be crossing out over the Cook Strait and then down along the eastern coastline of the South Island until we reach the Otago region, which is located down the south of the South Island, and then we'll land into the beautiful city of Dunedin. All up, it's around 630 kilometre journey by air and takes just over 1 hour. It's only operated by Air New Zealand, who are the sole operator on the route with their Airbus A320 aircraft. Before we head into the terminal, if you're new to my channel or visiting it for the first time, a very, very warm welcome. I'm Stephen, and I really like producing flight reviews and other sort of travel related content for you guys. If you are a fan of my channel and my flight reviews or other sort of travel content, whether you're a new fan or an existing one, if you haven't already done so, really appreciate it if you give my video a like and also subscribe to the channel. Really motivates me to produce better and better stuff for you guys. Also got an Instagram and a Discord server, so please don't forget to check out those as well. For your information, before you head to check-in, Wellington International Airport was the third busiest airport in the whole of Aotearoa, New Zealand, immediately prior to the COVID-19 pandemic. Ever been slightly nudged out by Christchurch on the South Island, Wellington itself had around 6.4 million yearly passenger movements. Has flights to basically all major cities and regional destinations across New Zealand, and also has international flights to various centres on the eastern seaboard of Australia and also to Nadi in Fiji. Check-in at Wellington Airport is a very straightforward affair, whether you're flying Air New Zealand, Qantas, Jetstar or whatever other airline. It's all done in one central area. Once you arrive into the terminal, you need to head up the escalators to the departures area. Air New Zealand is located on the right hand side, while Jetstar and Qantas are operated on the left hand side. So yeah, Air New Zealand have a pretty well fully automated self-service and bag drop kiosk. So yeah, very straightforward affair. To use the kiosk, you basically just use one of the various methods to bring up your booking reference, and then there you can check in, print off a boarding pass and a baggage tag. Then once you've got your baggage tag, you then proceed to another automated drop-off kiosk, and then yeah, you just scan your bag, follow the aviation security prompts again, and then off your bags will go, as in this case to Dunedin today. Very easy process here for Air New Zealand. So overall, my thoughts on check-in for Air New Zealand are really good at Wellington. Unlike Jetstar and Qantas, which do indeed have the self-service sort of check-in kiosk, to drop your bag with those airlines, you still have to visit a manual counter, which obviously incurs a much stronger likelihood of a queue. It's just a slower process indeed. So yeah, Air New Zealand definitely beats Jetstar and Qantas for check-in and bag drop at Wellington. At this point in time, there seemed to be no further talk of potential delays, stemming to the text message I got earlier this morning about heavy fog at Dunedin Airport. So yeah, I'm not totally 100% convinced yet we're going to be getting off on time, but my confidence of a on-time departure is certainly much boosted. I do very much appreciate Air New Zealand's approach to this potential delay. I very much like how they were proactive to the possible arising of an issue as opposed to being reactive. They were really good with the communication in the morning, and they even offered to allow customers to change to a different flight if they were really concerned about it. So yeah, it did mean I was heading to the airport a little bit uncertain, however, when this flight would get going. Due to a quirk in New Zealand aviation security regulations, which don't require flights with seats under 90 seats to go through aviation security screening, as I got to experience firsthand on my flight to Napier a couple days earlier on the ATR-72 from Auckland. This means Wellington Airport, just like many of other New Zealand's other major airports, has different zones for departing flights. So for Air New Zealand flights departing Wellington, jet services, such as what we are flying today on the A320, depart from their own dedicated departure area after security, which is located to the left-hand side of the terminal, whilst all Jetstar services, which are by default, will need to go through security because they only operate A320s in New Zealand. They have their separate little wing on the right-hand side of the terminal. On top of that, all other Air New Zealand regional services, which are generally operated by the Q300s or the ATR-72s, leave from a different area again, with no security screening required. Due to the nature of the airport, this means it has a central dining and retail precinct that's accessible to the public and all passengers before undergoing any security screening. So yeah, this is really the best place to stop by, have a eat, drink, buy a magazine or whatever you need before your flight, because once you go through past any security screening points, there's really not much there apart from obviously the Air New Zealand Koru Lounge for those on the jet services. If you're flying on a regional service, they've got a regional lounge as well. If you are flying internationally, which in most cases would be back to Australia, their international departures area is also located near the Jetstar domestic departures area, which is on the right-hand side of the terminal. Once through security, I'm then in the departures area for the jet services for Air New Zealand. It's really great plane spotting opportunities here with all the different regional Air New Zealand aircraft, and also their All Blacks Star Alliance aircraft right there. Looks really amazing. Interestingly enough, airport security, when you do have to go for it in New Zealand, does seem to be reasonably strict, possibly even a bit more stricter than Australia, to be honest. You always seem to take note of my power bank and are checking it for its milliamp hour rating, which is nowhere else in the world has ever checked my power bank. So yeah, they really seem to take it seriously when they do actually have security. Interesting enough. Anyway, with 10 to 15 minutes to boarding, interestingly enough, there doesn't seem to be any further mention or concern about the potential for fog down at Dunedin impacting our flight this morning. Nonetheless, I'm a little bit concerned still, as the flight board at the gate is still suggesting it's below freezing and foggy down there. Anyway, let's have a look at our ride down to Dunedin this morning. It's an Air New Zealand Airbus A320. Registration number Zulu Kilo Quebec Juliet Quebec. First delivered direct to Air New Zealand from straight off the production line in Toulouse, France, back in February 2011. This puts this particular Airbus in question to be at 12.4 years of age at this time of flight.
Wellington and Dunedin on Air New Zealand Flight 681. If you have completed check-in formalities, please proceed through security now to await your boarding call.
A few minutes later, boarding is announced on time around 8:30 ahead of our 8:50 a.m. scheduled departure from Wellington down to Dunedin. For your information, before we start boarding, just a little bit further route information about today's journey. So basically, this route between the capital of New Zealand and the second largest city on the South Island, which is Dunedin, it's one of the probably lesser travelled trunk line routes in New Zealand. The routes between Wellington, Auckland, Christchurch and even Queenstown definitely seem to be a bit busier with a lot more frequency and services. Air New Zealand are the sole operator on this route. They typically operate 2 direct daily services with their Airbus A320 aircraft, although you can also fly via Christchurch. That opens up a few more options. So yeah, it's going to be just over an hour down to Wellington today, or around 630 kilometres. For the direct flights with Air New Zealand, you have an option of a 8:50 a.m. morning departure or a 3:05 p.m. afternoon departure from Wellington. So yeah, both not too bad times. Pricing on the route does still seem pretty competitive. I got sort of the more inclusive fare that came with luggage and also increased booking flexibility. Still only came around at $100 New Zealand dollars, and also got complimentary seat selection as well, which was amazing. So the Airbus A320 domestic configuration that we're flying today very much is a stalwart aircraft of Air New Zealand's domestic jet network, although they are increasingly deploying A320 and A321 neo aircraft on some of their flagship domestic routes, which are a lot better aircraft again. However, this particular route seems to still be sticking with the regular A320s. As you know, Air New Zealand don't offer any business class on its domestic network, and its domestic Airbus A320 aircraft come installed with 171 seats in a free configuration across 29 rows. Seat pitch on this aircraft ranges quite a lot, from 30 to 34 inches depending on where you're sitting, but the average standard economy class seat comes in with a fairly standard 31 inch or roughly 78 cent seat pitch. The best seats on the plane in terms of seat pitch are the Space Plus seats, which are very much just a glorified branding of the exit row seats, which are in aisle 1, 11 and 12. These offer up to 86 centimetres a seat pitch. The seating itself is reasonably comfortable, pretty practical for the short domestic flights within New Zealand, though it's probably a step behind that. The A320 is used on its trans-Tasman and short-haul international flights out to the Pacific Islands. They definitely have a bit better amenities along with the sea. But yeah, the domestic A320s, they come equipped with a fairly standard tray-back table, sort of like a hard shell dugout with the in-flight magazine and safety briefing card, and overall they're a pretty comfortable sort of black leather seat, so really hard to complain for a very short flight. Anyway, we're now pretty well about to taxi out to the runway for our departure south out over the Cook Strait this morning. So yeah, while you're pondering possibly subscribing to the channel, what better time now just to sit back, relax and enjoy our lovely takeoff out of windy Wellington today, and enjoy those scenic views as we head out of Wellington and out across the Cook Strait down towards Dunedin this morning. Once in the air, I'll then offer my thoughts on this morning's service with Air New Zealand.
This is a Starline flight operated by Air New Zealand, and a special welcome back to our loyal airpoints members. Civil aviation rules require you to comply with all cruise instructions and signs while on board this aircraft. To prepare for takeoff, you must now store your tray label. Please check children's fingers and toes are clear of any moving parts. Ensure your seat back is upright, armrests are lowered, and the window shades are open. And we are about to explain the safety procedures for this aircraft. Smoking and vaping is not allowed anywhere on board this flight, including the lavatories. Charging a cigarette is also prohibited. Headphones connecting to personal electronics.
For our beautiful country, Jackie set out to visit the guardians of this world. Kia ora and welcome aboard this Air New Zealand flight. Just like Te Aki, Air New Zealand has made a promise to help care for our people, places and...
Come along.
All loose items should be stowed in the overhead locker or under the seats in front of you.
While we're on this epic journey, it's important you obey all crew member instructions, placards and illuminated signs.
If a seatbelt sign lights up, return to your seat, fasten your seatbelt.
Seatbelts fit low and tight across your hips. Keep them on throughout the flight.
If an emergency were to happen during takeoff or landing,
Shortly after takeoff, can't help but notice crew spring into action. Been a very short flight down to Dunedin today. They're very quick to get the in-flight service underway. We're seated towards the back of the plane, so yeah, probably going to be 10-15 minutes till they reach the back. So yeah, let's have a quick look at the entertainment options, or lack thereof, on Air New Zealand. So yeah, unlike the A320 Neo aircraft, which operate the trans-Tasman flights, there's no IFE screens built into the seats on the domestic Air New Zealand flights. There's no Wi-Fi either, and there's no stream to your own device options. Wi-Fi is, however, being rolled out across certain other Air New Zealand aircraft, just not the regular A320s at this time. To be honest, however, unlike domestic flights in Australia, which can reach up to 5.5 hours in length, with the longest flights in New Zealand not even reaching 2 hours, it's not really essential either though. Each seat, however, does come with a complimentary copy of the Kia Ora in-flight magazine, which interestingly enough you're free to take home after the flight as well, so this is not a bad little read. They also have trivia questions on the overhead screens as well, so that's pretty cool. So yeah, if there's spectacular views of New Zealand scenery of the South Island down below, which pity on this flight tends to be more on the right hand side, and the in-flight magazine itself doesn't really interest you, at least you can test out your skills about New Zealand culture and geography on the overhead monitors. That's really cool. Anyway, when the in-flight service does reach my seat, it's a very, very standardised Air New Zealand service. You get tea, you get coffee, and it comes with a cookie time, chocolate chip cookie, very much a staple at Air New Zealand's domestic service. So yeah, this is pretty much the extent of the in-flight service on Air New Zealand domestic flights here in New Zealand. Although they do have core hour flights that depart between 4:35 and 7:05 p.m. Monday to Friday, which are the jet operator services on the main trunk routes. On these flights you do get a complimentary drink, beer or wine, along with cheese and crackers or a savoury snack. So these might be flights to keep an eye out as well for. There is, interestingly enough, no buy on board menu. So if you are fancying something more substantial or fancier than what is complimentary offered, then unfortunately you're going to be out of luck flying domestically with Air New Zealand. And just like that, it's turning out to be an absolutely beautiful day down there. No sign of fog anymore at all. And there's the Otago Peninsula down there. And little over an hour after taking off from Wellington, we're about to make our final descent and landing into beautiful Dunedin today. So what better time now just to sit back, relax, enjoy this beautiful landing into Dunedin on this very fine and crisp May morning. Once on the ground, I'll then offer my final thoughts and verdict on today's flight. So now as we arrive at the gate, let me offer some concluding thoughts on this morning's flight before we head to the final AussieJetSetter AJ score review index. So yeah, I thought this morning's flight was a pretty pleasant and otherwise uneventful flight. Even if it seemed to be it was going to be disrupted with fog, thankfully that was not the case in the end. Yeah, so for the price of pay, it was very satisfied with the journey. The crew were really friendly and professional, and the seating on the aircraft, while it wasn't the most spacious, and it was adequate, and the complimentary coffee and snack, low basic, was pretty adequate for such a short flight. So without further ado, let's hand down the AussieJetSetter AJ score index score for this flight. Let's start with ground handling. Very much as an uneventful flight. Check-in, boarding, disembarkation. It was all very smooth process indeed. Very much just a very standard flight. So yeah, I'll give them a solid 15 out of 20. The next criteria is entertainment. Can only really get 10 out of 20 because there's no in-flight entertainment screens, but you can't really expect it either. But there is no makeup for that, like with free Wi-Fi or stream to your own device. That's possibly a little bit disappointing compared to back in Australia, although there is in-flight literature and the views outside are really good. So yeah, 10 out of 20 for that. It is what it is. In terms of aircraft and seat condition, really hard to find too many issues with this Airbus A320. Very much a run-of-the-mill, middle aged A320. Didn't really show any real signs of needing urgent attention. However, it was a fairly comfortable seat and fairly comfortable flight overall, so no real concerns. 15 out of 20. In terms of the crew and in-flight service, I thought the crew on today's flight was really amazing. Very, very friendly and really were proactive. They took their jobs really seriously, both in terms of ensuring customer satisfaction and also obviously in going over the safety of the aircraft. So that was really great. In terms of the snack itself, it's very basic. You do get tea and coffee. It's a very standardised Air New Zealand service. So yeah, not bad at all. Probably adequate for the short flight. Although you'd probably expect a bit more on a longer flight if Air New Zealand were to operate them. So yeah, so I give it a solid 15 out of 20. Finally, in terms of value for money, I give it a solid 16 out of 20 for only about $100. Fully inclusive in terms of luggage and booking flexibility and being able to select your own seat. Really can't complain for the price, and New Zealand's fares definitely seem to be a lot more affordable than Qantas or even Virgin Australia back home. So yeah, really can't complain in this regard either. So yeah, now as we pick up our bags and head out the Dunedin Airport, which is around 30 kilometres from the centre of town. So yeah, at this particular airport, it's very well worth potentially booking a shuttle service ahead of time, because taxi is going to be very expensive from this airport. So that's my little recommendation. But yeah, apart from that, really enjoyable flight today. Very uneventful, but an uneventful flight is a good flight in my opinion. Air New Zealand got me from A to B with a minimum of fuss and a very good price. So really solid experience with Air New Zealand today. Thank you very much for watching today's flight review as we're taking Air New Zealand down to Dunedin from the nation's capital of Wellington. If you have enjoyed the flight review today, really appreciate it. Give it a like, hit that thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel, and of course don't forget to visit my website AussieJetSetter.com.au, where we see your latest flight reviews, industry news, destination guides, frequent flyer hacks and more. Also started a Discord server recently, so if you wish to get involved as fans and the community of the channel, certainly join the server to get involved. Also visit my Instagram and Facebook pages. I'll also put links to all those in the description below so you won't miss them. But until the next time, thank you very much for watching today's flight review, and safe travels wherever that might take you.